This is Steve Jewin for MMA Mania. Bellator 165 takes place November 19, 2016 at the SAP Center in San Jose, California. This interview was recorded on November 10th, 2016 as I speak to one of the main card fighters for that show, Adam Piccolotti. Here's the interview. Steve Jewin, MMA Mania.
All right, Steve, you are now on the line with Adam Piccolotti. Hey, Steve.
How are you doing today? It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, dude, great. Thanks for talking with me.
No problem. I've been looking forward to this for a while because you've been a phenom in Bellator. You're undefeated. You're on the rise in the lightweight division. But when we get a press release, they always say California native, undefeated in Bellator. So what I want to know is beyond that, tell me more about Adam, the man who came up and wanted to be a mixed martial artist. How did you get to this point?
Well, it's been a long road, to say the least. I grew up with an older brother. I grew up wrestling, very competitive. You know, I've always loved competing in sports, whatever it may be. You know, even if we're playing tetherball, I want to win. I want to be the best. So that natural drive is what definitely has led me into the sport. I'm just a local coastside boy here. I skateboard, I skateboard. I like to hang out. I hang with my girlfriend. I walk my pit bull. You know, I just love the lifestyle that mixed martial arts brings, and I love the sport. I love to compete, and I'm very happy with the position I'm in.
Well, you talked about having an older brother and always wrestling, but at some point that switch must have been flipped. You must have seen a fight or heard about fighting and thought, man, this wrestling, I could translate this well.
Yeah, it was kind of it was a little more slow to me, to be honest. It was a little more organic. I remember in my wrestling career, that's all I was focused on. I didn't care about anything else. But I would watch the UFC here and there, you know, see guys like Matt Hughes just dominate people with their wrestling. And I was really interested in that more in a self-defense aspect, I guess, more in a just in case something goes down, like this is what I'm doing to people. And, that slowly led me into everything else. What really made me fall in love with mixed martial arts was jiu-jitsu. And again, watching how jiu-jitsu worked in the sport. And slowly from there, you know, working on my striking and then getting in the mix and sparring, jumping into pancration, and finally getting my start in amateur MMA.
And I remember one of the defining moments I saw early on when I wanted to get into reporting MMA was a wrestler versus a jiu-jitsu guy. It was straight up styles battle between Matt Hughes and Royce Gracie. They'd spent so long building up that fight as Royce is this legend from the early days of UFC, and then Matt just dominated it. I was blown away by that.
Yeah, I was in high school, and I think I was just starting in jiu-jitsu at the time, so it almost, you know, I was kind of bummed out by it, but I didn't quite understand where both men were at the time. And, you know, simply being that I think Royce may have been a little past his time at that moment. Matt Hughes was a little stronger at that moment. And so seeing that was definitely, you know, for me it was a win-win, you know, whether it be wrestling or jiu-jitsu that one, I'm all in. But yeah, it was definitely that sort of interest, that style battle, like you said. It was very fun in the early days.
Early in your career, before you came into Bellator, you were actually knocking more guys out than you were submitting, but obviously that's come along great in your Bellator career because you've got 3 straight fights that you finished with a submission. So at what point did it flow, I guess is the word? When did you feel the flow and that just started coming to you in fights?
Well, to be honest with you, I've done the same thing. I mean, obviously I've evolved, but I've done the same strategy, the same mental strategy on all my fights. I try to put the guy on the ground and I try to hurt him. You know, I'm going to go for that TKO. And in Bellator, it just so happens that my past 3 opponents have not wanted to take those strikes and given me the opportunity to finish my submissions. You know, I consider myself an aggressive kind of fighter, so when I'm putting my aggression on him, if he stays there, I'm going to finish him right there. But if he moves, I'm going to grab that submission.
We had an unfortunate situation with one of your fights earlier this year. You were originally supposed to face Jordan Parsons in San Jose, and his life was taken. I know you spoke about that after the fight when you got the win with a late notice replacement, but looking back now, the emotion just of taking that fight, even in the first place with a late opponent, that had to be a very tough decision.
Yeah, no, it was a really dark place. It was a really hard time. You know, I felt so much for this kid. I felt like we were connected in a way. Although I never got the chance to interact with him, I felt connected to him. And to have his life taken by, not even a car accident, by a murder, you know, it was definitely heavy. But as a competitor, as a fighter, as this being my career, I had to find a mental focus to continue to fight, to take on a last minute opponent. and to, do what I thought that he would have done in my situation.
Well, you did take the fight and did very well in it. And I know right after the fight, too, another thing you said was, I want to fight again as soon as possible. Put me on Team USA. I want to go to London. That obviously didn't happen. How close was that to actually happening?
That was just me wanting that. I wanted that bad. I love to travel, and I would have loved to be in London, and I would have loved to fight that soon. I would love to represent my country. But, no, it's not like I was talking about that. That was just in my mind. That's what I would have liked to do. That wasn't in their game plan, so, they've treated me very well to this point, so I trust their judgment, and I trust that they're going to, put me in the situations that I need to be in.
Well, you said you'd love to travel, but so far all of your fights have been in California, so at some point I guess it's going to happen, but we don't know when.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you, I don't mind, I love San Jose. I love fighting in front of my friends and my family and fighting at home. But I do know traveling is part of the sport, so I'm prepared for that when that time comes.
Do you think that gives you an advantage over cold roll Brandon Girtz, that you're going to have the crowd all on your side when he comes out for that fight?
To be honest, for me personally, I think everybody's a little bit different. I think people may take it in different ways depending on their personality traits. For me, if a crowd cheers for me or if a crowd boos for me, it's going to work in the same fashion. It's gonna motivate me one way or another. I just like having a crowd there. I like rising to the occasion. So I like being at home. I'm close. It makes it easy. I don't have to deal with the fatigue of traveling. That might be an advantage. But as far as that, I'm looking much past that into more the game plan and what's actually going to happen inside that cage.
Well, speaking of the game plan, Girtz has a very strong background as a wrestler himself. He was All-American in college. So what do you think that makes for a fight with him styles-wise?
I think it makes for a good fight, definitely. I'm one of the believers that you don't have to have the highest wrestling background to be a good wrestler in mixed martial arts. I look at, somebody like GSP, and it just goes to show that that's true. My wrestling has evolved immensely since my high school background. I wouldn't consider myself the most accomplished wrestler, but I do have a strong wrestling game, especially in the sport. He's going to be powerful, explosive, and I'm going to look to exploit that.
I think he may actually choose to eschew the wrestling and go straight for striking because he's got knockouts in 2 out of his last 3 fights, so he may not even go for a takedown. Yeah,
that's the thing about a lot of these wrestlers. They shy away from their base and they look more into the striking aspects, which is fine. If the guy tries to strike with me too much, he's going to open himself up, and my technical prowess is going to be able to find the openings that I need to find in order to get the job done one way or another.
You mentioned GSP, and I think he's a great example of something that I always talk about on my Mixed Martial Arts podcast is there's a difference between amateur wrestling and mixed martial arts wrestling, because in amateur wrestling, you're not using your takedowns to set up a punch, and you're not using your punches to set up takedowns.
Exactly. And people are not taking punches at you. When people throw a strike, what do? You rotate your shoulders, you rotate your hips. Well, that's putting you exactly out of position in order to defend the takedown correctly. So yeah, it's a whole nother game. It's a lot different. It definitely helps. You see some of the best wrestlers in the world, like DC, doing very well in mixed martial arts. They have that base, but it is different. It's a different story.
How far along do you think you are in your trajectory to getting a Bellator lightweight title shot? Do you think staying undefeated is enough, or do you really need to put it on a few bigger name people to get to the top?
I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these guys in the top 5 have been kind of beating each other. So I think being undefeated, I think I gotta perform well, next weekend and take out Brandon Girtz. And I don't see myself being far at all. I see my skill level and everything right there with any of these guys.
Now, you're going to be watching a fight later on in the evening between Chandler and Anderson. Do you favor either man in that fight? Who do you think is going to come out on top?
I've been a Henderson guy for a while. I've always liked him. I've always liked watching him fight. I've always liked his style. Can't say too much on his past couple fights lately. He hasn't looked the best, but if he comes out with a strong head, I think it's going to be tough. A tough match for Chandler. With that being said, Chandler's been on a roll. He's a really good fighter as well. So it's going to be a fun one. A lot of people are kind of writing off Benson. I've been hearing, but I think it's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, I think Henderson will probably show us something we haven't seen from him yet in Bellator. I think it'll be his strongest performance yet, but I never want to underestimate Michael Chandler because not only is he a great wrestler in his own right, but he has a punch that could stop a moose in its tracks.
Very true.
That Patricky Ferrari knockout is probably going to be on every highlight reel for the next 5 years in Bellator.
Yeah, fake with the right hand. He's got a lightning fast right hand for sure. He's bringing a lot to the table. He's going to be a tough opponent for any of these guys.
But if there's one thing I've seen from Benson Henderson over the years, and I've seen it a few times in person, it's that he rolls with punches better than just about anybody. You think you hit him, and then you don't.
Yeah, it's like hitting a wet noodle.
Indeed, and that frustrates people who think they won fights, and then they get outpointed by him at the end, and they're like, what happened?
Yeah, he's throwing those inside kicks, outside kicks, the short shots, rolling off the punches. He's hitting takedowns. Yeah, he's very well-rounded and crafty veteran.
Which of the two would you want to test yourself against first? I mean, not even whoever wins or loses that fight, but just of those two guys, who, styles-wise, would you want to try first?
Style-wise, either, but I would love to fight Benson just for the nostalgia and because I came up, in the early parts of my professional career, really looking up to him and watching him and studying him and seeing him as a champ and everything like that. So I'd love to fight Benson. I think that'd be an awesome experience, an awesome fight, and something that would mean a lot to me.
And he's got to feel like he's got a target on his back in so many ways because, like you said, not only is he a legend, but he's a former champion in 2 different organizations. So even though he's not the champ in Bellator right now, people still remember that fact and know that they'd be beating a former champ.
Oh, yeah, you always want to beat a former champ. I mean, that's definitely a big target on the back of his head.
Well, you've got a big target on your back, too, being undefeated, but it doesn't seem to me like you're feeling too much pressure about it.
I do, but record is the last thing that I think about, to be honest with you. I think about every fight individually, and I just try to do my best in each fight. I constantly have to, I've gone through times where I'll be driving and I'll be thinking and be like, wow, man, this is crazy. I'm 5-0. No, wait, I'm 8-0 now. It's something that's not in the forefront of my mind. It's something that I'm honestly reminded of more so than thought about myself.
Now, just out of curiosity, did you have any amateur fights before you turned pro, or did you jump straight into the pros?
No, yeah, I had that Blue Lake fight, and then I had 3 more with Camo, so I had 4 amateur fights in total.
Mm-hmm. Did you go 4-0 in those?
I did, yeah.
So you're undefeated going back to your amateur days, then. That's even longer record of being undefeated.
I am. Yeah.
Well, let's hope that continues here coming up in San Jose on November 19th. You've got a big fight with Brandon Girtz. But before I let you go, I like to get plugs and sponsorships and social media, anything that you want to get out there.
Please, you can follow me Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat at Adam Piccolotti. My athlete page, Adam the Bomb Piccolotti on Facebook. My biggest sponsors on it, Savage 3. I'm working with Venom this fight. All my coaches, Raul, Toby, Kenya, Hector, Chris Shaw, all the guys at AKA, all the Russians over at AKA, everybody's been such a big help, and I appreciate all of it.
All right, well, follow Adam Piccolotti on all forms of social media, and most importantly, follow him in the cage in San Jose on November 19th as he takes on the cold-rolled Brandon Girtz. Adam, thank you for the time.
All right, thanks for having me.
No problem, and Dan, thank you as well.
Don't miss Bellator 165 Chandler vs. Henderson, November 19th.